The memory of my own death began with the scent of damp burlap, thick and cloying in my nostrils, and the crushing weight of a hand over my mouth. My last conscious thought wasn't a prayer or a fond memory, but a single, searing name, Liam. It was a curse, a plea, and an epitaph all in one. Then nothing. I gasped, my eyes flying open. Harsh fluorescent light replaced the suffocating darkness. Instead of rough sackcloth, my fingers clenched the smooth, laminated surface of a school desk. The air smelled of whiteboard markers and the faint, citrusy cleaning solution the janitors used. A low hum of concentrated energy filled the room, the sound of 24 students meticulously filling out the most important form of our young lives, our university applications. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage of bone. I looked down. The application form on my tablet was blank, the cursor blinking mockingly in the first-choice university field. My hands trembled so violently I had to clutch them under the desk. "Hey Maya, you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." The voice, smooth as honey and twice as familiar, sent a jolt of pure ice down my spine. I turned slowly. Liam was leaning over from the desk beside mine, his brow furrowed in what my past self would have mistaken for genuine concern. His eyes, the color of a summer sky, held a warmth that I now knew was a lie. Behind him, sipping from a bottle of designer water, was Chloe. His white moonlight. His perfect, untouchable muse. The other half of my murder. In my previous life, I had scored 718 on the entrance exam. Chloe had scored 717. A single infuriating point. I had chosen Stanford. I had dreamed of its sun-drenched courtyards and hallowed halls. But the acceptance letter that came back was from the Riverdale Institute of Technology, a name that elicited snickers from everyone who heard it. I became the city's laughingstock, the professor's daughter who had crashed and burned, while Chloe, with her lower score, was celebrated for her Stanford acceptance. I never understood why until the day I overheard them talking by the lockers. "Good thing I switched Maya's application," Liam had said, his voice a low, conspiratorial murmur. Chloe's tinkling laugh grated on my ears. "I know, right? Stanford only accepts 10 from the entire region. With her 1-point lead, if she got in, I'd be the one left out." The world had tilted on its axis. The betrayal was so complete, so cold-blooded, it stole the air from my lungs. I hadn't meant to cry out, but a choked sob escaped me. They turned, their faces a mask of shock that quickly morphed into panic. I rushed forward, my vision blurred by tears of rage, screaming that I would expose them, that I would ruin them. I never got the chance. Liam, afraid I'd destroy the perfect future he'd orchestrated for Chloe, grabbed me. Chloe, her beautiful face twisted in fear, helped him shove me into a janitor's supply closet. I remember the grimy feel of a heavy-duty trash bag being yanked over my head, the plastic clinging to my mouth and nose as I fought. Liam's hand, the one that had so often held mine, was now pressed hard over my face, smothering my screams, my breath, my life. And now I was back. The day was reset. The universe, or karma, or some nameless cosmic force, had given me a chance to do it all over again. "Why, Liam repeated, his voice laced with a hint of impatience. "You zoning out on us? This is kind of a big deal." I forced my breathing to slow. I unclenched my fists, feeling the half-moon indents my nails had left in my palms. The past was a ghost. This was my reality now. "I'm fine," I managed, my voice hoarse. "Just a lot of pressure." He smiled, that dazzling heartbreaker smile that had once made my knees weak. "Don't worry. You got this. Hey, do you want me to help you submit yours? The school's server can be glitchy, and I know how much Stanford means to you." The audacity of it. The sheer, unvarnished gall. In my first life I had beamed at him, so grateful for my thoughtful, tech-savvy boyfriend. I had handed over my tablet and login credentials without a second thought. I had trusted him implicitly. Never again. "No," I said, my voice firmer now. "I've got it. But thanks." A flicker of surprise crossed his face, so quick I almost missed it. It was replaced by a placating nod. "Okay, suit yourself. Just make sure you don't mess it up." "Oh, I won't," I thought, a cold, hard certainty settling in my chest. "But you, Liam, you are about to mess up in ways you can't even imagine." I turned back to my tablet. My fingers, now steady, flew across the screen. Stanford University. I typed it with a fierce, vindictive joy. I double-checked every field, every box, my eyes scanning for any potential digital tampering. I would not be a victim of a simple hack this time. I hit submit and felt a wave of visceral relief. The first step was taken. The final bell rang, a shrill sound that signaled the end of one life and the beginning of another. Students erupted into chatter, a mix of anxiety and exhilaration. I packed my bag with deliberate slowness, watching Liam and Chloe from the corner of my eye. They were a perfect picture, him tall and golden, her delicate and poised. They thought they were untouchable. Maya, a bunch of us are going to the cafe to celebrate being done with this, Liam said, slinging his backpack over one shoulder. Come on, it'll be fun. In my past life I had gone. I had sat there, buzzing with excitement about my future, completely unaware that it had already been stolen from me. This time I clutched my stomach, letting a pained wince crease my forehead. I can't, I groaned. I've got a killer stomach ache all of a sudden. I think it's the stress. I just need to go home and lie down. Liam's face fell into a mask of performative worry. Oh no. Do you need me to walk you? No, I said, perhaps a little too quickly. I softened it with a weak smile. I'll be fine. I just need to rest. You guys go ahead. I didn't wait for another argument. I turned and walked out of the classroom, my steps measured until I cleared the doorway. Then I ran. I didn't stop running until I burst through the front door of my house, the familiar scent of old books and lemon polish a balm to my shattered nerves. Maya? You're home early, my mom called from the kitchen. How did it go? Fine, Mom. Just tired. I yelled back, already taking the stairs 2 at a time to my room. I slammed the door shut, locking it for good measure, and dove for my laptop. My fingers trembled again, but this time with purpose, not fear. I logged into the application portal. My heart stopped. There was. First choice, Riverdale Institute of Technology. He'd done it. Somehow, even without my tablet, he'd still managed to access my account and change it. The deadline hadn't passed yet. Applications could be modified for another 24 hours. A cold fury, purer and sharper than any I had ever felt, ignited in my veins. He was so sure of himself, so sure of his control over me. With a few decisive clicks I changed it back. Stanford University. I then logged out of all devices, changed my password to a complex 20-character string I stored in an encrypted app, and set up 2-factor authentication on a new secret email address. It was done. I lay back on my bed, staring at the ceiling. The ghost of the burlap sack was gone, replaced by the solid reality of my second chance. Liam and Chloe had no idea that the girl they had killed was gone, replaced by someone they had created. A woman who knew their every move, their every secret, and who was now playing a very different game. And I was just getting started. Sleep, when it finally came, was not the restless, haunted thing I expected. It was deep and dreamless, a total systems reboot for a soul that had been violently unplugged. I woke with the dawn, the first golden rays painting my room, and for a single disorienting moment, everything was normal. Then the memory settled back over me, not as a panic but as a mantle of cold iron. A purpose. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Liam's face, all smiling innocence, flashed on the screen. I let it ring, watching the call go to voicemail. A minute later, a text popped up. Liam, hey, just checking on you. How's the stomach? You had me really worried yesterday. The manipulation was so transparent now. Every word was a calculated move on a chessboard only he could see. I waited a full hour, letting him stew, before I picked up the phone and called him back. Why? Thank God. His voice was a masterpiece of feigned relief. I was starting to think you were mad at me or something. Sorry, I just woke up, I said, layering my voice with a convincing grogginess. Sleep helped. I feel a lot better. That's great to hear. He paused, and I could almost hear the gears turning in his head. So, I was thinking about your application. I know how much Stanford means to you, and I didn't want you to stress about the tech stuff. So I went ahead and made sure Stanford was locked in as your first choice. You're not planning on changing it, are you? The sheer, breathtaking audacity. He was checking his work, making sure his sabotage had held. I forced a light, airy laugh. It sounded foreign to my own ears. Of course not. You already put Stanford for me. Why would I change it? It's my dream. I could feel the tension drain from his end of the line in a nearly audible sigh. That's great. That's Perfect. I just wanted to make sure you were happy. I'm thrilled, I said, my voice sweet as poison. Thanks for looking out for me, Liam. We exchanged a few more hollow pleasantries before he hurried off the phone, no doubt eager to report his success to Chloe. I hung up, my hand clenched so tightly around my phone I was surprised the screen didn't crack. He had confirmed everything. In this timeline, just as in the last, he had actively tried to destroy my future. The last shred of doubt, the faint hope that my memory was some twisted stress dream, evaporated. This was real. And they were going to pay. The days that followed were a study in surreal normalcy. I played the part of the anxious post-exam student perfectly. I lounged around the house, read novels, and helped my parents in the garden. All the while, my mind was a war room, plotting and planning. Our neighborhood was a tight-knit, gossipy fishbowl. My parents, both respected literature professors, were well-liked, but their quiet academic success had always been subtly overshadowed by the flashy, volatile presence of the Bakers next door. Chloe's father, David Baker, was a blustering man whose get-rich-quick schemes, usually involving sports betting or cryptocurrency, were the stuff of local legend. Their house was a monument to his booms and busts. A new SUV in the driveway 1 month, foreclosure notices tacked to the door the next. The news that I, the professor's daughter, was a shoo-in for Stanford had spread like wildfire. I knew it would have reached Chloe. The knowledge would be festering inside her, that single point of difference between us burning like an acid drip. I decided to feed the fire. I took out the trash one evening, timing it perfectly. As I lifted the lid of the bin, I heard the baker's front door open and close. I turned, feigning surprise. "Oh, hey, Chloe." She was leaning against her doorframe, arms crossed. She was dressed as if for a photo shoot, even just to take out the recycling. "Why, I heard the big news. Stanford. You must be feeling pretty confident." I shrugged, wiping my hands on my jeans. "I did my research. My score puts me right on the cusp. It's a risk, but it's Stanford, you know? It's the dream. I'd be crazy not to try for it." A faint, condescending smile played on her lips. "It's the dream for students all over the country. What, were you just going to give up on Stanford and pick somewhere like Riverdale instead?" She said the name Riverdale, as if it were a contagious disease. My blood ran cold. It was the same line, almost verbatim from the conversation I'd overheard in my previous life. He knew. She absolutely knew what Liam had done. I met her gaze, my own expression neutral. "Who would choose Riverdale?" I echoed. "But you know how it is. Until you have that acceptance letter in your hand, nothing's for certain." Her eyes glittered with a secret knowledge. So true. Life is so unpredictable. She pushed off the doorframe. "What about you? Which school did you apply for?" "Oh, I applied for Stanford too," she said casually, inspecting her manicure. "I know they only take 10. It's a long shot, but who knows? Maybe I'll get lucky." I gave her a small, tight smile. That's true. Hopefully we'll both get in. We could be classmates." She didn't reply. A flicker of pure, unadulterated mockery crossed her face before she could school her features. It was a look that said, "You poor, deluded fool. You'll be lucky to get into community college." She turned and went back inside without another word. The application window closed. It was the point of no return. The very next day, Liam came to my door, his face a tragic mask of conflicted nobility. "Maya, we need to talk," he said, his voice heavy with faux gravitas. "I don't know how to say this, but if I don't, I'll hate myself." I leaned against the doorframe, mirroring Chloe's pose from days before. "What is it, Liam?" He took a deep, shuddering breath. "The truth is, the one I really love is Chloe. I only started dating you because we had a fight and I was upset. But it was unfair to you. To lead you on like this." He looked at me, his eyes begging for understanding. "I have to be honest with you. I have to follow my heart." In my first life, these words would have shattered me. Now they were just lines from a bad play. He was doing this now because the application deadline had passed. He thought my fate was sealed to Riverdale, and his pride couldn't stomach being tied to a social pariah. He was cutting me loose before the embarrassment could taint him. I had been wondering how to ditch the dead weight. He was handing me the perfect opportunity. I let a silence hang in the air just long enough to make him sweat, then I nodded slowly. "Okay." His eyes widened. "What?" I said okay. I kept my voice light, almost disinterested. I understand. If you love Chloe, then you should be with her. You should treat her well. I hope you two are very happy together. His mouth opened and closed. He had prepared for tears, for screams, for begging. He had a whole arsenal of justifications and gaslighting ready to deploy. My calm acceptance completely disarmed him. All his rehearsed speeches died in his throat. You're not mad. I shrugged. What's the point? You can't force someone to love you. It's better to know now. I began to close the door. Take care of yourself, Liam. I shut the door on his stunned, gaping face. I leaned against it, a slow, genuine smile spreading across my lips. Phase 1 was complete. I was free of him. Now the waiting began. And while I waited, I decided to sit back and enjoy the show. Because David Baker, armed with the unshakable belief that his daughter was Stanford-bound, was about to put on a performance for the ages. The walls in our complex were thin, and almost every night I could hear him on the phone, his voice a wheedling, desperate whine. Uncle Leo, it's David. Listen, I need a loan. A big one. $100,000. I know, but I can pay it back. My daughter, Chloe, she got into Stanford. Yes, Stanford. The school itself is giving her a $10,000 award. And that's just the start. Once the big tech companies here, they'll be sponsoring her. Just wire me $50 for now, come on. What are you afraid of? Once she graduates, she'll be making $500,000 a year easy. I'll be swimming in it. He was building a mountain of debt on a foundation of sand. And I was the only one who knew the earthquake was coming. The weeks of waiting were a masterclass in stillness. While the world around me buzzed with anticipation, I cultivated a quiet core of certainty. I spent my days reading, not for school but for pleasure, something I hadn't done in years. I took long walks, feeling the sun on my skin, a sensation I'd thought lost forever. Every morning I would look in the mirror and see not a victim but a strategist. The ghost of the burlap sack was fading, replaced by the steel of my resolve. The same could not be said for the Baker household. Their performance was reaching a crescendo. David Baker, buoyed by his own fabricated reality, became a whirlwind of obnoxious triumph. He swaggered around the apartment complex, his chest puffed out, a permanent, smug grin plastered on his face. One afternoon I heard a knock on our door. My father answered. David stood there, reeking of cheap cologne and unearned confidence. Professor Lin, he boomed, not bothering to lower his voice. I heard your Maya only got into some lousy no-name college, huh? A real shame. My father, a man of immense patience, simply raised an eyebrow. I'm not sure where you heard that, David. The admission letters haven't arrived yet. David waved a dismissive hand. Details. The point is, she can't possibly compare to my Chloe. Stanford. Can you believe it? He leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that was still loud enough for the whole hallway to hear. Look, if you suck up to me now and lend me a little cash, I might even tell my daughter to help Maya find a job later. A janitor at one of those big tech firms, maybe. Otherwise. He leaned back, spreading his hands in a gesture of mock pity. Well, you'll just have to suffer in her failure. I stepped into the doorway behind my father. That's very generous of you, Mr. Baker, I said, my voice dripping with a sweetness that could rot teeth. But we're doing just fine. He snorted, a harsh, ugly sound. Haha, still talking big? Just wait. When the admission letters arrive, you'll see. And when that time comes, even if you beg me to borrow money, I won't lend you a cent. With a final contemptuous glance, he turned and continued his door-to-door groveling, his voice echoing through the stairwell. My parents were speechless with a mixture of anger and disbelief. The man is unhinged, my mother murmured, closing the door. Maya, are you sure about all this? The pressure he's putting on Chloe, it's not healthy. I'm sure, Mom, I said, giving her a reassuring hug. Everything is going to be exactly as it should be. The day the admission letters were due to arrive, the air in our apartment complex was thick with a festive tension. Neighbors lingered in the courtyard, pretending to tend to potted plants or check their mail, all waiting for the main event. My parents, unable to contain their nervous excitement, brought me downstairs just after breakfast. And there, as if on cue, were Liam and Chloe waiting by the main gate. They were a united front, a picture of smug solidarity. Liam's arm was draped protectively around Chloe's shoulders. Chloe's eyes found me immediately, and she offered me a look of such profound, practiced pity it was almost artistic. Maya, you're waiting for your letter too? She asked, her voice a syrupy simulacrum of concern. If you don't get Stanford's letter, don't be too sad, okay? Life's full of surprises. Not every dream comes true. You should lower your expectations. Hearing the same script from my previous life, I felt a surge of cold amusement. I let out a non-committal, "Oh," and turned my attention to the street. Before long, a harried-looking postal worker on a scooter rounded the corner, a thick stack of envelopes in his hand. The crowd stilled. He held up the first one, a thick, creamy envelope with a distinctive logo. "Admission letter from Stanford University," he called out. A wave of excited murmurs rippled through the neighbors. This was it. The moment David Baker saw the envelope, he erupted. "Ha ha," he shouted, punching the air. "My daughter's Stanford admission letter is finally here. All of you who looked down on me, who wouldn't lend me money. Look at you now. Green with envy. My girl's going to Stanford while yours can only dream." He pointed a trembling, accusatory finger around the courtyard before strutting up to my parents, his chest inflated. "And you too. The professors. Always looking down on me for gambling, saying I can't raise my daughter, right? Well, open your eyes and look. The daughter of a gambler like me still got into Stanford. Meanwhile, your so-called educated family raised a girl headed for some bottom-tier school, not even worthy of a strand of my daughter's hair." My parents remained silent, their faces tight with disdain. Chloe, meanwhile, was still staring at me with that infuriatingly pitying expression. "Maya, when you open your letter, don't be too upset, okay?" Liam nodded, his face a mirror of her feigned sympathy. "Chloe's right. Not everyone can get into Stanford. If you didn't make it, don't be too discouraged." I looked at both of them and simply smiled. A small, knowing smile. Just then the delivery man came jogging back holding 2 more envelopes. "More Stanford letters," he announced, looking confused. The moment she heard this, Chloe sprang forward, her composure cracking. "That's mine. Give me my Stanford letter." But the delivery man pulled the envelope back and squinted at the name. Recipient: Violin. A dead silence fell over the courtyard. "What nonsense are you spouting?" Chloe shrieked, her voice shrill. "The Stanford letter is mine. I'm Chloe Baker." She lunged forward, trying to snatch the envelope from his hand. The delivery man frowned, holding it out of her reach. "What are you grabbing for? Chloe Baker's letter is right here." He held up the second, much thinner envelope. "This one belongs to Maya Lin. And this one," he read the name on the thinner envelope, "is for Chloe Baker. From the Riverdale Institute of Technology." The silence shattered into a cacophony of gasps and disbelieving laughter. "Riverdale? What the hell is that? Didn't she say she got into Stanford? How did she end up at some backwater college?" Chloe's face turned a ghastly shade of white. "Impossible. I checked. Stanford only accepted 1 student from this district. I was the only one who applied." In a frenzy, she tore the thin envelope from the delivery man's hands and ripped it open. She pulled out a single flimsy piece of paper. The words were barely legible, scrawled in cheap ink. "Congratulations, you have been accepted to Riverdale Institute of Technology." "No. This is impossible. Someone sabotaged me." Her wild, hysterical eyes landed on me. "Maya, did you switch our letters? Riverdale was supposed to be yours." She launched herself at me, claws out, but my father was faster. He stepped in front of me, grabbing her by the wrist and shoving her back firmly. "What nonsense are you spouting?" he said, his voice cold with anger. "Admission letters are sent directly from the universities. How could my daughter possibly switch them?" Liam rushed to Chloe's side, his face a mask of confusion and worry. "If Maya didn't switch the letters," he stammered, the words tumbling out before he could stop them, "then how could she have gotten into Stanford? She clearly applied to Riverdale." There was the confession spoken aloud in front of everyone. I stepped out from behind my father, my gaze locked on Liam. "And how exactly would you know I applied to Riverdale, Liam?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "I remember telling you very clearly that my score was enough for Stanford. Weren't you the one who insisted on helping me with my application?" The color drained from his face. The neighbors were staring, their whispers intensifying. "Enough with this nonsense," he finally snapped, his composure breaking. "Stanford belongs to Chloe. With your score, do you really think you have the right to compete with her? hand over that admission letter and go back to your Riverdale." He reached out, trying to snatch the thick, creamy envelope from my hands, but I held it fast. "Admission letters are issued under our legal names," I said, my voice ringing clear in the stunned courtyard. "Even if you grabbed it, it wouldn't do you any good. Stanford doesn't accept imposters." "You're lying. That letter has my name on it." Chloe screamed hysterically. She tore the envelope from my hands and ripped it open in front of everyone. But the bold print at the top was unmistakable. "Myelin." Chloe froze, the paper trembling in her hands. "Impossible," she whispered over and over. "Impossible." Then her father stormed forward, his face purple with rage. He wasn't looking at me, he was glaring at his daughter. "You wretched little brat. What the hell is going on? Didn't you say you got into Stanford? Didn't you say there'd be a cash award? If there's no money, my creditors will beat me to death. You'd better find a way to get me that money. Now." His tirade was cut short by the sound of drums and gongs. A small procession rounded the corner, led by our beaming school principal. When he saw me, his face lit up with genuine delight. "The scholarship award for the student admitted to Stanford has arrived," he announced. The crowd went wild, surging forward. "Is it true? There's a scholarship. How much?" The principal was smiling so wide his face seemed to split. He walked up and placed a giant ceremonial certificate in my hands. "This year," he boomed, "the award has been doubled. $20,000. The gasps were deafening. $20,000. It was a life-changing sum for a student. David Baker lunged forward and grabbed the principal by the collar. "Why the hell are you giving her $20,000? Her test score was only 1 point higher than my daughter's. Why not give that $20,000 to my girl instead? Did her parents bribe you? If you don't explain yourself today, I won't let this go." The principal, though startled, remained calm. He pried David's hands from his shirt. "Those questions are better directed to your daughter," he said, his voice carrying a stern authority. "Based on her score, even if she didn't qualify for Stanford, she still could have easily gotten into another strong university. But she was so confident she would be admitted to Stanford that she left all her other choices blank. The result," he gestured to the flimsy paper still clutched in Chloe's hand, "was that the only school that accepted her was Riverdale." Hearing this, Chloe finally broke. She burst into ugly, wrenching sobs and turned on Liam. "Didn't you say I was guaranteed to get into Stanford? That I didn't need to fill in any backup options? What is this Riverdale place supposed to be?" Liam's face was a thundercloud of unease and frustration. He stammered, I don't know. Obviously I... He cut himself off, his eyes darting to me. He knew that if he admitted to tampering with my application in front of all these witnesses, I would have him arrested on the spot. The consequences were too real. He clamped his mouth shut, glaring at me with pure, impotent rage. I didn't spare them another glance. I turned to the principal and the small crowd of reporters who had arrived with him, a gracious smile on my face. "Thank you so much," I said, my voice clear and steady. "Would you all like to come inside?" As I ushered them into my home, leaving the shattered remains of the Baker family and a seething Liam in the courtyard, I felt the first true warm flicker of victory. The trap had been sprung. Their perfect world was in ashes. And this was only the beginning. The days that followed my very public vindication were a study in social whiplash. Our small apartment complex, which had once been a stage for David Baker's grandstanding and my subsequent humiliation in another life, was now a pilgrimage site for a different reason. Reporters, neighbors, and even distant relatives I barely knew poured into our home, their voices a constant buzzing hum of congratulations. The air was thick with the scent of the floral arrangements that now crowded our living room, their vibrant colors a stark contrast to the gray memory of my past death. My parents, initially bewildered by the sudden, intense spotlight, soon bloomed with a pride so profound it was almost tangible. They handled the attention with a grace I admired, their quiet academic dignity a fortress against the fickleness of public opinion. I saw the way they looked at me now, not just as their daughter but as a survivor, a victor. It filled a hollow space inside me that I hadn't even known was there. Meanwhile, the world outside our door was a different story. The Baker household had become a tomb. The laughter and bluster that used to emanate from their apartment were gone, replaced by a heavy, oppressive silence, punctuated only by the occasional sound of shattered glass or David Baker's guttural, enraged shouts. The debt collectors, no longer placated by promises of future Stanford riches, had become permanent, menacing fixtures in the courtyard. Their voices were low and gravelly, a constant, threatening undertone to the summer heat. "Where's the money, Baker?" I heard one of them snarl one evening, his voice carrying through my open window. "You said your girl was a genius, Stanford. You played us." David's reply was a wheezing, desperate plea. "I have it. I just need more time. She'll get a job, she." A sharp crack followed by a cry of pain cut him off. "She's going to a dump called Riverdale. She's worthless. And so are you. You have 1 week. Or we're taking her. A pretty girl like that can earn back your debt in other ways." I closed my window, the chill in my bones having nothing to do with the air conditioning. They were tearing each other apart just as I'd hoped. But the ugliness of it was a stark reminder of the world I was dealing with. It was 3 days after the admission letter debacle when Liam finally managed to corner me. He'd been calling and texting nonstop, a torrent of increasingly desperate messages that I had deleted without reading. That morning, as I stepped out to buy breakfast, I found him leaning against the wall by the complex entrance, looking haggard. He held a bouquet of slightly wilted carnations. "Maya," he said, his voice rough with fake emotion. "I've been waiting here all morning. Finally you came down." I didn't break stride. "What are you waiting for me for? Go pack your things and take your girlfriend to Riverdale." Instead of shame, a flicker of hope lit his eyes. He fell into step beside me. "Maya, just from your voice I can tell you still care about me. You must have been heartbroken when I said I wanted to break up, right? Don't be sad. It was all a misunderstanding. I was only joking. Let's make up, okay?" He thrust the flowers at me. I looked at the pathetic bouquet with open disgust. "Liam, could you please stop making me sick? You know damn well what you did with my application. Yet you're still pretending here. Making up with you? Keep dreaming." I tried to walk away, but he grabbed my arm, his grip tight. "Maya, the application mess was just me being foolish in the moment. Besides, didn't you already fix it? Nothing actually changed in the end. The result is still good. You still got into Stanford, didn't you?" I stared at him, truly stunned by the depth of his narcissism. He genuinely believed that because his sabotage had ultimately failed, it was as if it had never happened. The intent, the malice, the murder, it was all just a mess to be swept under the rug. I was about to unleash the full force of my contempt when I saw her. Chloe. She was standing just inside the gate, half hidden by a potted plant. Her face was pale and a fresh, livid bruise bloomed on her cheekbone. Her eyes, dark pools of hatred, were fixed on Liam's hand on my arm. An idea, cold and perfect, crystallized in my mind. I changed my expression, letting the hard lines of anger soften into something more pliable. I gently pulled my arm from Liam's grasp and tilted my head, offering him a small, hesitant smile. "You know," I said, my voice softer now, "you have a point. The past doesn't matter anymore. I've already been admitted to Stanford and soon I'll be a proud student there. There's no need to dwell on what's behind us." The transformation in him was instantaneous. Relief washed over his face and he nodded eagerly, like a puppy being offered a treat. "Maya, I knew you were the kindest, most forgiving person. Once we get to California, I'll take good care of you. After you graduate from Stanford, we'll settle down there, buy a house together." He moved in as if to hug me, his voice dropping to what he thought was a seductive murmur. The thought of his touch made my skin crawl, but I held my ground. From Chloe's angle, it would look like an intimate embrace. I let her watch for a count of 3, let her see the man who had killed for her future now cozying up to the woman he had tried to destroy. I saw her hands clench into fists, her whole body trembling. Then I found an excuse and gently pushed Liam away. "I have to go. My parents are waiting for breakfast." I walked away, leaving him standing there, hopeful and oblivious, and her seething in the shadows. That evening, as I returned from a walk, Chloe materialized from the darkness at the bottom of the stairwell, blocking my path. The bruise on her face was more pronounced under the harsh fluorescent light. "What did Liam say to you today?" she demanded, her voice a low, venomous hiss. I feigned unease, looking down at my shoes. "Nothing much. He just said he regretted breaking up with me and wanted to make up. That's all." As I predicted, her composure shattered. "That two-timing scumbag," she spat, her body trembling with rage. I looked up, blinking with feigned innocence. But Chloe, the one who actually got into Stanford is me. Don't you think it's clear now who the real fool is? Her face darkened, a storm cloud of paranoia and fury. What do you mean? Are you and Liam hiding something from me? I took a half step back, widening my eyes. Of course not. But even if there was, that would be a secret between Liam and me. Why would we tell an outsider like you? The word outsider was a lit match thrown on gasoline. Outsider, she shrieked, her voice echoing in the concrete space. Who are you calling an outsider? Liam and I grew up together. We've known each other since we were kids. He's loved me for years. He'd do anything for me. And you dare to call me an outsider? I kept my expression infuriatingly placid. Well, that's not what Liam told me. He said you wanted him to secretly change my application, but he couldn't bear to hurt me, so he still submitted Stanford for me. I paused, letting the lie hang in the air, then covered my mouth in mock alarm. Oh no. I wasn't supposed to say that. Liam told me not to mention it to you. Just forget I said anything, Chloe. I gave her a final, pitying look, then sidestepped her and stepped into the waiting elevator. As the doors slid shut, I heard her scream Liam's name, a raw, guttural sound of betrayal and fury, followed by a torrent of curses. The serpent I had nurtured was now turning to strike the hand that had once fed it. And I hadn't even had to lift a finger. The final unraveling happened a few nights later. The debt collectors, their 1-week ultimatum having passed, descended in force. The sounds from next door were not the usual shouted arguments, but something darker, more violent. Thuds, crashes, and desperate animalistic pleas. I peered through my blinds. David Baker was on his knees in the courtyard, his face a bloody mess. Yes. Just don't hit me anymore. Anything you want, take my daughter. She's yours. Please just spare me. Chloe, who had been standing to the side, frozen in horror, seemed to snap at her father's words. The final betrayal. Her face, illuminated by the harsh security light, contorted into a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. Fine, she whispered, her voice carrying a terrifying calm. All of you have lied to me, humiliated me, sucked the life out of me. I won't let it end like this. She moved with a feral speed, snatching a knife from a nearby gardening toolbox. Before anyone could react, she lunged at the nearest debt collector, slashing his arm. The man screamed in pain and surprise. The others, enraged, swarmed her. One of them, a mountain of a man, backhanded her so hard she spun and collapsed to the concrete, the knife skittering away from her hand. It was only when a neighbor, terrified of a murder on their doorstep, called the police that the chaos subsided. Sirens wailed, and both Chloe and her father were hauled away in ambulances. A few days later, I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that David Baker had discharged himself from the hospital and vanished, leaving his daughter to face the mountain of debt and legal trouble alone. The debt collectors, unable to find him, turned all their attention to Chloe. With no one left to fleece and all her relatives long since drained dry by her father, she had no options. She went to Liam. It was her last, desperate hope. I didn't witness the encounter myself, but Mrs. Gable from 3B, our building's self-appointed news service, gave me a detailed report. She said Chloe, still bruised and limping, had approached Liam outside his building. She said Liam had looked at Chloe not with pity, but with pure, unadulterated disgust. Chloe, he had reportedly said, his voice cold, didn't I tell you we were done? Why are you still coming to me? Do you think I'd want a girlfriend who goes to Riverdale? Who's covered in dirt and bruises? According to Mrs. Gable, Chloe had gritted her teeth and said, so it's true. You set me up on purpose, didn't you? You deliberately filled out Stanford for Maya and left me to apply here just so I'd end up stuck in that trash school. Liam had apparently snapped, his own frustration boiling over. I did everything I could for you. Who told you not to back yourself up? If you couldn't even get into a halfway decent school, that's on you. Do you know how much ridicule I've had to face because of you? Don't come looking for me again. Right now I'm pursuing Maya. Only a Stanford student is worthy of being my girlfriend. With that, he had turned and slammed the door in her face. When Mrs. Gable finished her story, she clucked her tongue sympathetically. That poor deluded girl. I just nodded. Poor wasn't the word I would have used. Deluded, yes. But also dangerous. A cornered animal, publicly shamed, financially ruined, and now utterly abandoned by the two people she thought were her allies. I had set the pieces on the board, and they had moved exactly as predicted, destroying each other in the process. But as the summer began to wane and the time for me to leave for Stanford drew near, I knew the game wasn't over. Liam, the most shameless piece of all, was still on the board. And he wasn't done with me yet. The rest of the summer passed in a blur of preparation and quiet satisfaction. My parents and I spent days shopping for dorm essentials, the mundane act of choosing bedsheets and a desk lamp feeling like a sacred ritual. Each item packed was a brick laid in the foundation of my new life, a life they had tried to steal. The scholarship money was safely deposited, a financial shield that felt as empowering as it was practical. But a shadow trailed me, persistent and shameless. He was a ghost haunting my new existence, a buzzing fly I couldn't swat. His texts evolved from pleading to entitled. Liam, I know you're still upset, but we need to talk about our future. Liam, my parents are asking when we're going to California. I told them we'd be traveling together. Liam, has your scholarship money come through? We should probably book flights soon. I blocked his number. He then started using texting apps, his messages slipping through the digital cracks. Unknown number. It's Liam. Why are you ignoring me? We're meant to be together, Maya. Stanford is our future. His audacity was a bottomless well. He had rewritten history in his own mind. Our breakup was a temporary spat. His attempted sabotage of my future was a mistake washed away by my success. In his twisted reality, my Stanford admission was now our Stanford admission, a shared trophy he felt entitled to simply because he had once been my boyfriend. He began showing up. Outside the library where I did my summer reading. At the cafe where I met with old friends. He'd linger at a distance, holding a new, slightly less wilted bouquet, his expression a nauseating blend of longing and proprietary expectation. I ignored him, walking past as if he were a lamppost, the cold dismissal clearly infuriating him. I consulted a lawyer, a kind-faced woman named Ms. Chin. I laid out the facts, the application tampering, the harassment. She listened patiently, then sighed. Without clear evidence of the tampering, a confession, digital logs we can subpoena, it's his word against yours, she explained gently. And as for the harassment, we can send a cease and desist letter. But given that he hasn't made explicit threats, the police will likely see it as a lover's quarrel. I'm sorry, Maya. The frustration was a hot coal in my chest. The system, so rigid in its requirements for proof, couldn't touch the slimy, persistent reality of him. He existed in a gray area just outside the reach of justice, a parasite on the edges of my life. The morning of my departure dawned bright and clear. A hired car was scheduled to take my parents and me to the airport. As we carried the last of my luggage downstairs, he was there, leaning against his beat-up sedan, a suitcase of his own at his feet. He'd gotten a haircut and was wearing his best shirt, the picture of a devoted boyfriend ready for a grand adventure. He plastered on that fawning smile and stepped forward, reaching for my heaviest suitcase. Maya, let me get that for you. I'm all packed. Ready to go. I yanked the suitcase back, the wheels clattering on the pavement. The disgust I'd been holding back for weeks finally broke through my restraint. Liam, what part of "stay away from me" is so difficult for you to understand? What you did with my application might not be enough to put you in prison, but I will never ever forget it. I don't want anything to do with you. You are trash. My parents moved to flank me, their presence a silent, solid wall of support. Liam's smile didn't even falter. It was as if my words were in a foreign language he refused to learn. Maya, it was all just a misunderstanding. Maya, give me one more chance. I promise I'll. His words died in his throat. We all turned. Standing at the entrance to the complex was Chloe. She was almost unrecognizable. The summer of debt and despair had hollowed her out. She was thinner, her clothes hanging loosely on her frame. The once vibrant girl was now a washed-out photograph. But it was her eyes that held me. They were twin pools of a desperate, burning resolve. In her hand she clutched a thick envelope. Tuition money, I guessed, scraped together from God knows what degrading work. The moment she saw Liam, a fragile, hopeful light ignited in her gaunt face. She hurried forward, her steps quick and unsteady. Liam, I finally saved enough. The tuition to repeat the year. Her voice was breathless, eager. This time I'll study hard. I promise. Next year I'll get into Stanford. Wait for me in California, okay? She looked at him like he was her salvation, the one fixed point in her collapsing world. Liam's face transformed. The fake affection he'd been showing me melted away, replaced by a look of such pure, unadulterated revulsion it was almost impressive. He looked her up and down from her worn-out shoes to her desperate eyes. "Have you even looked at yourself?" he sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. "You're no better than some streetwalker now and you still think you can get into Stanford? What a ridiculous fantasy." He turned his back on her, his gaze shifting back to me, instantly becoming fawning and pleading again. The whiplash of his shift was nauseating. It was the final straw. I saw it happen in slow motion. The fragile hope in Chloe's eyes didn't just die, it exploded. The light snuffed out, replaced by a void of pure homicidal rage. The months of humiliation, the failed application, the debt collectors, her father's betrayal, and now this, the ultimate dismissal from the boy who had promised her the world, coalesced into a single decisive impulse. My own survival instincts screamed. I knew that look. I had seen it in the closet in the moment before the bag went over my head. I spun on my heel. "Mom, Dad, get in the car. Now." Liam, oblivious, took a step toward me, his mouth opening to continue his pathetic appeal. He never got the chance. "You ruined me." Chloe shrieked, her voice tearing through the morning quiet. Liam started to turn, annoyance on his face. Maya's application being switched. That was all me. He didn't get to finish his boast. In one fluid, terrifying motion, Chloe lunged. She wasn't holding a garden knife this time. It was a small, sharp kitchen blade that caught the morning sun. She drove it straight into his chest. The sound was a soft, sickening punch. Liam's eyes bulged. He stared down at the handle protruding from his body, his mouth a perfect O of shock. He made a gurgling sound, shoving her back weakly. "Crazy. How dare you?" Chloe just laughed, a high, manic sound that didn't belong in the bright sunshine. "Huh. All of this. Everything that's happened to me is because of you. You thought you could just throw me away for her? I'll die before I let that happen." She yanked the knife free and stabbed him again. And again. The world narrowed to the horrific tableau. The spray of blood, arterial and bright red, arcing through the air. The thud of Liam's body hitting the pavement. Chloe standing over him, her face and hands splattered, laughing and sobbing at the same time. Sirens wailed, growing closer. They felt like they were coming from another dimension. Paramedics worked frantically on Liam, but there was too much blood. It pooled on the hot asphalt, a dark, spreading stain. He was gone before they could load him into the ambulance. Chloe didn't resist when the police arrested her. She just kept laughing that broken, hollow laugh, her eyes fixed on some point in the distance already gone from this world. I stood frozen, my parents' arms around me, shielding me from the worst of the view. I had wanted revenge. I had wanted them to suffer. But I hadn't. I hadn't pictured this. The raw, messy, final reality of it was overwhelming. The shadow was gone. Permanently. But as I looked at the bloodstain on the ground and the empty, broken shell of the girl being led away in handcuffs, I felt no triumph. Only a cold, vast quiet, and the chilling understanding that some games once started can only end in ashes. The world after Liam's death was painted in shades of gray. The vibrant excitement of my Stanford future felt muted, distant, like a radio playing in another room. The police took our statements. My parents, pale and shaken, described Liam's persistent stalking. I recounted, in a voice that sounded too calm to my own ears, the history of his manipulation, the application tampering, and his final fatal rejection of Chloe. I left out the part about my previous murder. Some truths are too monstrous to speak. The detective, a weary-looking man with kind eyes, nodded. It aligns with the witness statements from the other tenants. It seems Mr. Evans's actions created a volatile situation. That was one word for it. Volatile. It felt inadequate to describe the nuclear explosion of rage and ruin that had detonated on our doorstep. The news coverage was brief but brutal. Teen love triangle ends in tragedy. Stanford dream turns deadly. Our apartment complex became a macabre tourist attraction for a few days, gawkers slowing their cars to stare at the fading stain on the pavement, now just a dark, ghostly smudge. I packed the last of my things in a daze. The new clothes for my new life felt like costumes. My parents were quiet. their joy for me now tempered by a grim understanding of the darkness that had lurked so close to their daughter. They held me tighter, checked on me more often, their love a warm, steady anchor in the unsettling quiet. The day before my flight, a different kind of visitor arrived. Miss Chin, the lawyer, her expression professional but not unkind. Chloe Baker has been formally charged with second-degree murder, she informed us, sitting in our living room amidst the packed boxes. Given the circumstances, the history of manipulation, the public provocation, her mental state, her public defender is likely to pursue an insanity defense. Her mental state? My mother asked, her voice soft with a pity I couldn't quite feel. According to the preliminary psychiatric evaluation, she's experiencing a severe break from reality, Ms. Chin explained. She's largely non-responsive, but when she does speak, it's only about Stanford. She claims she's already a student there, that she's top of her class, that tech companies are offering her millions. She's been transferred to a secure psychiatric facility. I sat silently absorbing this. A life sentence in a different kind of prison. It wasn't the concrete cell I might have imagined, but it was a cage nonetheless. Her mind, the very thing that had been so prized, was now her warden. And Liam's family? My father asked. Miss Chin sighed. They're devastated, of course. But from what I understand, they were aware of his fixations. They knew about the application issue. There's a sense of tragic inevitability about it all. They won't be pursuing any action against you, Maya. The evidence of his harassment is too clear. After she left, I went to my room and looked out the window. The courtyard was empty. The stain was gone. But I could still see it. I could still see him falling. I could still hear her laugh. I had wanted justice. I had wanted them to feel a fraction of the fear and helplessness I felt in that dark closet. I had gotten more than I bargained for. The scales hadn't been balanced. They had been shattered. The morning of my departure was subdued. The hired car arrived and we loaded my luggage in silence. As we drove away, I didn't look back at the apartment complex. I kept my eyes fixed on the road ahead, on the horizon line. I was leaving the ghosts behind. Liam was a bloody memory. Chloe was a whisper in a padded room. David Baker was a phantom, vanished into the underworld of his own debts. The flight to California was a liminal space, a journey between my past and my future. I stared out the window at the endless blanket of clouds, feeling untethered. My parents sat on either side of me, their presence a silent promise of continuity. When the plane descended through the clouds, the landscape of Northern California unfolded below, rolling golden hills, clusters of red-tiled roofs, and in the distance the sparkling blue of the bay. It was so bright, so open, so different from the cramped, gossip-ridden world I had left behind. We took a taxi to Stanford. As we drove through the iconic palm-lined entrance, past the sprawling golden stone buildings and the manicured quads, a strange feeling began to stir in my chest. It wasn't the unadulterated joy I had once dreamed of. It was something more complex, more earned. A profound, weary sense of arrival. We found my dorm, a sun-drenched room with a view of a courtyard. As my parents helped me unpack, making my bed and arranging my books on the shelf, the gray numbness began to recede, replaced by the simple, tactile reality of my new life. Later we walked through the main quad. Students buzzed around us, their faces filled with the uncomplicated excitement I had once possessed. They were talking about classes, clubs, parties. Their biggest worries were syllabi and roommates. I felt a century older than them. My mom slipped her arm through mine. "You did it, Maya," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You're here." I looked around at the arcades, the church, the towering palm trees against the impossibly blue sky. This was the dream. The prize. The thing I had been killed for. The thing I had killed for, in a way, through the consequences of my actions. It was tarnished. It was stained with memory. But it was mine. Not Liam's. Not Chloe's. I had outrun the sack. I had outrun the shadow. I had navigated the wreckage of their lives and emerged, scarred but standing on the other side. That night, after my parents had left for their hotel, I stood alone by my dorm window, looking out at the campus lights twinkling in the warm California night. The air smelled of eucalyptus and possibility. For the first time since I'd opened my eyes in that classroom, the ghost of burlap was completely gone. There was no scent of dust, no echo of betrayal. There was only the quiet hum of the new world I had fought so hard to reach, and the vast, open and terrifying freedom of the future ahead. The game was over. I had won. Now I had to learn how to live with the victory. The first semester at Stanford was a study in dissonance. I moved through a world of sun-drenched beauty and intellectual stimulation, a world I had clawed and schemed my way into, yet I felt like a ghost haunting my own life. The frantic energy of freshman orientation, the dizzying array of clubs vying for my attention, the late-night debates in the dorm common rooms, it all felt like a play I was watching from the back row. I threw myself into my studies with a ferocity that bordered on self-flagellation. Every page of dense academic text I mastered, every complex problem I solved, was another brick in the fortress wall around my new life. I chose a demanding course load, majoring in computational biology, a field so complex and forward-thinking it felt like a different planet from the petty, violent world I'd left behind. My professors saw a driven, brilliant student. They didn't see the fuel that drove me, the fear that if I stopped even for a moment the memories would catch up. I made a few casual friends. Sarah, my bubbly roommate from Chicago who was obsessed with indie bands and vegan food. Ben, a lanky physics major from Maine who could explain quantum theory with the ease of someone discussing the weather. They were kind, normal, unburdened. I kept them at arm's length, careful to construct a version of myself that was just Maya, the smart girl from out of state. The story of Liam and Chloe was a black box I sealed shut and buried deep. But the past has a way of leaking out. It was a Tuesday afternoon about 2 months in. I was in the library, hidden in a corral with a stack of textbooks, when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. An area code from home. A cold dread trickled down my spine. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, a text appeared. Unknown. Maya, it's Carol Evans. Liam's mother. I'm in Palo Alto. Can we please talk? The world tilted. Liam's mother. Here. My first instinct was to run, to block the number, to pretend I'd never seen it. But a morbid curiosity and a strange, gnawing sense of responsibility held me fast. I thought of the weary grief in the detective's eyes. Tragic inevitability. I thought of the bloody stain on the pavement. Against my better judgment, I replied. Me where? We met at a quiet coffee shop off campus, a place far enough away that I wouldn't risk running into anyone I knew. Carol Evans looked like a ghost herself. She had aged a decade since I'd last seen her at a school function. Her clothes hung loosely and her eyes were red-rimmed and hollow. Thank you for coming, Maya, she said, her voice raspy. She clutched a ceramic mug as if it were the only solid thing in the world. Why are you here, Mrs. Evans? I asked, my voice flat. I couldn't afford her sympathy. I couldn't afford to feel anything. She took a shaky breath. I'm cleaning out his things. His laptop, there were files. Passwords saved. Drafts of emails he never sent. She looked at me, her gaze pleading for understanding. He was sick, Maya. I see that now. He had this fixation. On status, on perfection. It started in middle school, I think. We failed him. We always pushed him to be the best, and when he couldn't be, he just started manipulating the world around him to make it look like he was. He was trying to make sense of the senseless. Trying to find a reason for the monster her son had become. He had a folder on his computer, she continued, her voice dropping to a whisper. Pictures of you. Screenshots of your social media, your class schedule from last year. And a document, a plan. For after Stanford. He had your scholarship amount written down, Maya. He had it circled. The air left my lungs. The harassment hadn't stopped because he was dead. The ghost of his entitlement was still reaching for me from beyond the grave. He hadn't just wanted me. He had wanted my success, my money, my future. He saw it as his rightful property. I'm telling you this, Carol said, a tear finally escaping and tracing a path down her cheek, because I am so sorry. For what he did to you. For what he tried to do. And because I think you deserve to know how deep it went. You were never just a girlfriend to him. You were a prize. The ultimate validation. We sat in silence for a long moment. The hum of the coffee grinder and the soft jazz music felt obscenely normal. What happened to him? What that girl did, Carol whispered. It was horrible. But a part of me, a terrible small part of me knows that he was on a path that could only end in ruin. For himself or for someone else. She looked at me, her eyes clear for the first time. I'm glad it wasn't you. Those 5 words landed with the force of a physical blow. I'm glad it wasn't you. She was acknowledging the unthinkable truth I had been carrying alone, that Liam was capable of murder. My murder. I didn't know what to say. I couldn't forgive him. I couldn't absolve her. But I gave her a small, stiff nod. An acknowledgement of her pain and her truth. After she left, I walked back to campus in a daze. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the golden stone buildings. Carol Evans's words had reshaped the past yet again. Liam wasn't just a jilted boyfriend or a saboteur. He was a predator whose sickness had been festering for years. I hadn't provoked it. I had simply been his chosen target. A strange weight lifted from my shoulders. The last lingering tendril of guilt. The what if I had handled it differently? Withered and died. There was no version of events where Liam Evans would have let me go peacefully. My death in that previous life wasn't a tragic accident. It was the logical conclusion of his pathology. I stopped walking in the middle of the quad, the memorial church spire piercing the twilight sky above me. For the first time I truly looked at my surroundings. I saw the students laughing, the couples holding hands, the ambitious, brilliant, normal lives being lived all around me. I had been so focused on building a fortress, I had forgotten to step outside its walls. That night when Sarah asked if I wanted to go to a stupid movie with her and some friends, I said yes. I didn't lose myself in the plot, but I laughed at the dumb jokes. I ate over-buttered popcorn. I listened to my new friends debate the merits of the film on the walk back to the dorm, and I even offered a small, quiet opinion of my own. It was a small thing. A normal thing. But it felt like a revolution. The crown of my victory had been heavy, forged in betrayal and blood. But as I lay in bed that night, listening to Sarah's gentle snores from the other side of the room, I realized the weight was finally starting to feel like my own. I had earned this place. Not through luck, not through someone else's sacrifice, but through my own resilience. I had fought a war they had started and I had survived. The past was a country I had left. It no longer defined my borders. Here, under the California stars, I was finally, truly free. And for the first time I believed I deserved to be. The second semester dawned not with the grim determination of the first, but with a quiet, burgeoning sense of ownership. The ghost of Liam Evans no longer whispered from the shadows of the library stacks. The echo of Chloe's manic laughter no longer haunted the quiet moments between classes. They were receding, becoming chapters in a closed book, tragic and brutal, but no longer dictating the story of my present. I started to inhabit my life at Stanford rather than just occupying it. I didn't just attend my computational biology lectures. I raised my hand, I challenged assumptions, I found a fierce joy in the elegant complexity of protein folding and genetic algorithms. My professor, Dr. Abrams, a woman with a sharp mind and a kind smile, pulled me aside after class one day. "Maya, the work you're doing on this protein prediction model is exceptional," she said, her eyes alight with genuine excitement. "It's innovative. Have you thought about undergraduate research? My lab has an opening for a research assistant this summer." The offer felt like a key turning in a lock. It wasn't just an academic opportunity. It was an invitation into a future I had built for myself, brick by intellectual brick. I accepted on the spot. My social life, once a carefully managed performance, began to feel more organic. I didn't just go to movies with Sarah and Ben. I started initiating plans. We went on a hiking trip to Big Basin, standing in the hushed ancient presence of the redwood groves, their colossal trunks making my own troubles feel small and manageable. I even tentatively started dating a guy named Leo from my advanced statistics class, who was more interested in debating data normalization than my past. He knew me only as Maya, the girl who was unervingly good at solving problem sets. It was liberating. One Saturday afternoon I was sitting with Sarah in our dorm room, a pile of textbooks between us and the sun streaming through the window. We were taking a study break and she was scrolling through her phone, her face lit by the glow. "Whoa," she murmured, her eyebrows shooting up. "This is some seriously dark stuff." My blood ran cold, the old paranoia flaring for a split second. "What is it?" "It's this true crime blog my mom follows," she said, turning the screen towards me. "They're doing a deep dive on a case from your hometown. A love triangle, a murder right before college. Wow, the guy was trying to sabotage the girl's college application? That's next level messed up." There on the screen were their faces. Liam's yearbook photo, smiling his charming empty smile. Chloe's from a school play, her eyes bright with ambition. The article was clinical, piecing together the timeline from public records and anonymous source accounts. It painted a picture of Liam as a manipulative narcissist and Chloe as a victim of his schemes who ultimately snapped. My name was mentioned, but I was the Stanford student, an anonymous catalyst in their tragedy. The author had, thankfully, respected my privacy. I felt Sarah's eyes on me. Maya, this is your hometown. Did you know them? I took a deep breath. The black box was rattling. For so long I had kept it sealed, fearing that opening it would release a poison that would taint this new life. But looking at Sarah's curious, concerned face and feeling the solid ground of Stanford beneath my feet, I realized the poison had already been neutralized. The story no longer had power over me, I had power over it. I said, my voice even. The boy Liam was my boyfriend. He's the one who changed my application. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. Oh my God, Maya. That's terrifying. And the girl, she's the one who... I nodded. She was his obsession. He did it for her. And when it all fell apart, she killed him for it. I didn't tell her everything. I didn't mention the burlap sack, the suffocating darkness, the second chance. Those were my burdens to carry, the secret foundations of my resilience. But I gave her the truth of this life. The betrayal, the fear, the aftermath. Sarah listened, her face a canvas of shock and empathy. When I finished, she was silent for a moment. Then she got up, came over to my side of the desk and wrapped me in a tight, wordless hug. I'm so sorry you went through that, she whispered. And I'm so glad you're here. And in that moment I was too. Truly deeply glad. Sharing the story hadn't broken me, it had integrated the broken pieces. It was no longer a hidden monster under the bed, but an acknowledged part of my history. A few weeks later, a formal letter arrived from the district court back home. Chloe Baker had been found not guilty by reason of insanity. The psychiatric reports described a profound and persistent psychotic break, fixated entirely on the Stanford delusion. She was deemed a permanent danger to herself and others and was committed to a high-security psychiatric facility for the foreseeable future. There would be no trial, no more headlines. It was the final, quiet closing of that particular door. The news brought no sense of victory, only a profound and settling peace. The saga was over. The semester ended in a blaze of finals and farewells. I aced my exams not out of desperation but out of mastery. I said goodbye to Leo, who was spending the summer interning in New York, with a genuine fondness and no heartbreak. I helped Sarah pack her absurd collection of vinyl records, promising to visit her in Chicago. As I packed my own things for the summer to be spent in Dr. Abrams's lab, I came across a small, forgotten box at the back of my closet. Inside were a few mementos from high school. A prom ticket stub, a faded friendship bracelet, and at the bottom a photograph. It was of me from my previous life. I was standing between Liam and Chloe at a school carnival, my arms slung around both their shoulders, beaming at the camera with a trust so complete it was painful to look at. I was innocent. I was blind. I held the photo for a long time, not with anger or grief, but with a distant, quiet pity for the girl I had been. She had no idea what was coming for her. She had no idea how strong she would have to become. Then I tore the photograph in half. I tore it again and again until it was nothing but confetti. I walked to the trash can and let the pieces flutter down, a silent burial for the ghost I had finally laid to rest. I stepped out of my dorm and into the brilliant California sunshine. The air was warm, smelling of cut grass and eucalyptus. Students streamed past me, laughing, shouting, alive with the promise of summer. I slung my backpack over my shoulder, feeling the weight of my laptop and my books, the tools of my chosen future. I was no longer the girl who had been betrayed. I was no longer the avenger, the strategist, the survivor clinging to the wreckage. I was Maya Lin, a Stanford student, a research assistant, a friend. I had walked through fire and emerged not just unscathed but tempered. The past was a shadow, but I was standing in the sun. And for the first time I turned my face towards it without flinching, ready to embrace whatever came next on my own terms. My life, my real life, was finally beginning. The end.